This is Matt Huber. Today in this tutorial, I wanted to just look at the idea of triggering snare reverb or triggering snare ambience. And so the idea here is instead of using or alongside of using a typical reverb approach for snare or drums in general, what we're doing is we would be triggering a drum sample that is essentially a 100% reverb, 100% mix reverb on like a snare. Or a lot of times people will trigger like the room mic of a snare. And so that's what we're going to be doing here. So like I said, this is to kind of be used alongside reverbs, and it's more of just it's a way of doing it where you've got a ton of control, and sometimes will even give you more realistic results. And so because kind of the idea is instead of putting reverb on a close mic sound, you're using just a room sound, which is kind of just a larger picture of that snare without any of the artificial vibes of having a mic right up close to a snare, which is never how we listen to a snare in real life. And so it's just a cool approach. So let's go ahead on this track, just to kind of give a little context. It's a live tune. And so we're in a 2,000 seat auditorium here. And so I wanted to represent it with this larger than life drum sound that is in a big room like that. So this was a live recording done at New Life Church. My church. It's a great song. So what we'll do first is we're going to just listen to the room that we're putting it into. These are the crowd mics. Cool. So it's a pretty large room. So we can't just really crank those rooms to get that snare sound because there's a lot of other things that are going to be coming up with it. So I want the control here. So here is the sound of the drums without any sort of ambience. So you'll notice there's a pretty big difference here. I'm leaning pretty heavily into this triggered ambient sound. So here it is. I'm going to go ahead and play it, and then I'm going to bring in just my normal snare reverb, just so you can hear that, and then we'll bring in the triggered ambience. Cool. So here it is with some snare verb. So that's just bringing in, a little bit of plate, nothing crazy. Kind of stays out of the way, gives it a little bit of width. And then let me show you just the snare ambient track here that we're triggering. It's pretty massive. It's just a room mic being run through a reverb. So just to give it a little extra length. So here's that. Pretty crazy. It's a pretty big sound. But remember, I'm trying to fit it into a room that probably has a decay of about, 1.75 to 2 seconds of reverb. So, we're going for a pretty big sound here. So let's take a look here with everything minus the snare ambient trigger, and then we'll bring that in. Here it is without. And with. None. Pretty massive difference there. Obviously, this is a pretty ridiculously big snare sound. It just kind of fits the genre. And so your mileage may vary. I mean, in a lot of situations, I'm triggering like a small room or a one shot that I was doing of just the room mics on a snare. So, the beginning of every session, after we get the drums sounding great, I'll roll one shots down, snare, kick, the two toms to get really great, just clean hits. And then I'll grab the room mics from that and just trigger that every time the snares hit. So it's in the space that it's in, but it gives me that extra control of being able to manipulate the room mics just with the snare. So it's a super flexible way of doing things, and one that I highly recommend. You'll want to kind of adjust the approach based on the genre. But yeah, let's just take a listen to it one more time. And just so you know here, what I'm doing is I take the snare up track and I copy it down to an additional track, and then I run trigger on there to trigger the sample that I have here. and then I did some EQing, and then a little additional reverb on that room mic just to give it some length. And so let's listen to it one more time. With and without. Pretty crazy difference, but it's just a great tool to use, and I hope this comes in handy for you. Thanks so much.